order. Welcome, those of you that are in attendance. I appreciate your being here. Would you please stand with me as we give our pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. Dr. Doler, could we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Wise.
Here.
Mr. Irwin.
Present.
Mrs. Killian.
Present.
Mrs. Lohr.
Here.
Miss Lauer.
Present.
Dr. Powers.
Present.
Miss Scott.
Here. Reviewing our vision and mission. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. Dr. Hayworth, we have a special presentation.
It is a special presentation, especially when you get pie at your board meetings. So we look forward to this every year. Thank you to General Manager Steve Huddleston and the Grand Transverse Pike Company for their continued partnership with the Vigo County School Corporation. The donation includes proceeds from a Community Pie Day held on June 21st with the VCSC on site. A portion of apple pie sales for the months of June, July, and August from the Hunger Free Summer promotion, and a personal donation from Steve. The Grand Transverse Pie Company is donating $2,000 to the Vigo County School Corporation Backpack Program. Thank you very much.
Three different checks there. Totaling up to 2,000.
Thank you so much. I think we have something behind for you.
I have just a certificate of appreciation, and you are so good to us. I appreciate that. And I would like to alert the audience, this is a one-time only thing, but those pieces of pie that are back there, individually wrapped, are yours to take as you leave tonight. So please don't forget them, because they're yummy. Thanks again.
Let me turn right here.
Yeah, let's see. How do we want to get? Thank you.
Thanks again.
Sure.
Now I'd like to call on Dr. Balatevich.
Good evening, President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the School Board of Trustees. At our last board meeting, it was requested that Student Services, the Student Services Department, give a short presentation to introduce our community to restorative practices that we use in the Vigo County School Corporation. So with the help of Dr. Megan Kirk, we are going to present those concepts and the strategies that we use in our school corporation. So with no further ado, Dr. Kirk.
Good evening. All right, so I'm going to just spend a few minutes here and talk about the restorative practices and what we've got going in the Vigo County School Corporation. When we talk about restorative practices, we really talk about wanting to strengthen relationships between individuals and make connections within the school building. We talk about school communities. That could be a class, a club, athletics, band, any extracurricular activity. We want to make sure that our students are feeling connected to their schools, and restorative practices is one way that we can do that. In the school building, we can work on building that healthy school climate through these communities that promote relationship building, problem solving, through some restorative methods, and I'll touch on some practices that you might see in our schools. Some of those include these circles. When it comes to teaching and conflict resolution, our goal here is really to have students reflect on and take responsibility for their actions, but also creating an action plan to repair harm that may have been done through their behavior. So really taking that time to reflect, accept responsibility, and make a plan to make changes going forward. Restorative environments, I'm using a triangle here because that blue part is what we would call a universal approach. These are strategies that we would want applied to the whole school, using community circles every day, morning meetings where we just take time to connect with students, make a quick connection, check in on them. How are they doing today? Giving opportunity for peers to make connections as well. Using restorative language, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well. But again, really focusing on building connections and relationships with their peers and also adults in the building. Creating opportunities to check in and check out with staff to make sure that they're on track to meet their goals for that day. This works really well with some challenging behaviors. The next level of that triangle is repairing relationships. So when action has been taken, we might want to respond with a responsive circle, some peer mediation, or a restorative chat. Bringing both parties together, if they're willing to have a conversation about how this situation has impacted both parties and how they would like to resolve that. But doing so in a more calm method that is guided by an adult. The very top is about rebuilding those relationships. This is a little more intensive, much more formal process with restorative conferencing in circles, restorative plans and agreements. So very small % of our population in the schools would ever be at this level where we would have restorative conferences, but again, facilitated by a mediator with both parties preferably. So these are just some of the restorative practices that you can use when you're implementing these. We encourage a restorative mindset at all times, and restorative language, which I'll use on the next slide to showcase what that looks like. Proactive circles, community circles, again, opportunities to build connections in and out of the classroom. Restorative chat, again, when minor issues come up, taking time to process the harm that was done so that we can move forward. This can be done by teachers, administrators, counselors, those that have daily contact with students. A responsive circle might be more of bringing the whole class together to address a behavior that is impacting the whole class and making it difficult to move forward. Again, works better when that class is already connected to one another and they can discuss the impact that behavior has had on the whole group. The formal restorative circle, again, is more for serious instances where there's maybe repetitive behavior, other interventions aren't working, that you would want to have that conversation and really work on an action plan to improve the behavior. Restorative language we often talk about communication stoppers and then the restorative language. Communication stoppers really look at passing judgment. You know, why did you do that? You never listen. Shifting from using that why language, which comes across as accusatory, and shifting that to tell me what happened, what was going on when that took place. I want to understand you. I want to understand what's going on with you. Shifting from a place of judgment to a place of understanding, empathetic listening, diagnosing, you know, the problems that you're disrespectful, and shifting it to an affective statement. You know, I'm really concerned about you when you have your head down. Are you feeling okay? I feel concerned because you seem to be really disconnected lately. What's going on? Again, shifting to, you know, what's going on with you. Not why are you doing that? Demanding, you know, sit up and look at me. Don't talk to me like that. Again, shifting that into a restorative mindset where it's, you know, what happened? What were you thinking when that happened? Or who else do you think was affected by your behavior? Giving them an opportunity to think about their impact. And then going with that deserve thinking you deserve to be punished. And again, thinking about the impact of the rule that was broken on the community. You know, and we want the hallways quiet in school so that all the other students can learn. Or when you yell in the hall, it makes it hard for teachers and students to do their work and feel safe. So just shifting that language a little bit can make a huge difference. So really trying to reduce those communication stoppers and increase our restorative language is one of the practices as well. In the Vigo County School Corporation, fall of 2019, we partnered with Peace Learning Center, and they traveled to us and provided full-day workshops in person, about 6 hours for level 1 and 6 hours for level 2. We offered these to our administrators, our counselors, our behavior interventionists, our deans. We asked them to attend these trainings so that we could build the mindsets with them first, with the plan to expand this out to the teachers. So in that first level 1 workshop, they're really working on the mindset and just the restorative practice basics for doing this work. The second workshop really focused on how do we conduct these restorative circles, these conferences, what action do we have to do? And we were provided a script to help us facilitate those. Fast forward to this fall, we have offered a level 1 virtual workshop for some of our newer counselors, behavior interventionists, administrators, so that they can embrace that mindset as well. But then we offered a refresher course for those that went through in fall of 2019. So they got just a restorative refresher to talk about those practices and talk about problem-solving strategies. So our goal is to continue to work through this with others.
So I'll take questions here in a second, but I just want to, first of all, thank Dr. Kirk for giving us a short overview of this. But really, restorative practices come down to 3 things for me. First of all, it's teaching respect. And it's highly important in our society that we garner a respect for our fellow human beings. And teaching those skills of respect go a long way in our society. And that is done through a variety of different ways. It's not always through a disciplinary infraction. As Dr. Kirk said, restorative circles, or circles that they use in the morning, especially in the elementary school, just to get to know each other. Because when you know each other, it's easier to respect each other, and it's harder to be disrespectful. The second part is empathy, building empathy. And that's such an important concept to learn these days, is to really think about, especially in terms of a disciplinary action, is how did you make that other person feel? Because sometimes that's left out of the equation. And when you enter into a restorative circle, then at the end, or throughout that circle, you come to a conclusion that I may have injured somebody. I may have hurt somebody's feelings. And that is a very, very powerful tool to use in regard to student discipline or student behaviors. The last one, and this is really important, is the opportunity for redemption. And redemption's important, and we often forget that in our society. And redemption is offered to everybody. And I often have these discussions with students when they're in an expulsion setting. And I'm the primary expulsion examiner for the school corporation. And when I have students come in to have the discussion about what happened, I often talk about redemption. Because you have to be able to have the opportunity to repair that relationship with the school, or perhaps your parents, the greater community, and those are all done within restorative practices. We've been doing restorative practices before it was named Restorative Practices for as long as I've been in this school corporation, and longer than I've been in this school corporation. But it's named something, and it gives us a path, a guideway to be able to do it in a very standardized manner. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Just had a question as to exactly who is invited to the workshops, who attends the workshops?
Great question. Any administrator, dean, counselor, behavior interventionist, counselor, I said that maybe twice. Those would be the people that we would invite, and that's really the tier 1 that we have. We have plans to be able to push this out to all of our staff at some point. I think we were interrupted over the last 20 months to be able to do that, but our plan is to be able to push that out. But really, our elementary schools have really pushed this forward and are using it quite readily in our elementary schools.
You know, I would offer the suggestion that perhaps you also invite student leaders into that equation, because they often, you know, the kids have wonderful ideas, and being on that ground level, they might know of some, they might have some general ideas that we haven't thought of.
That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Any other questions that you may have?
What would you say is the overall impact of these practices when they're really being implemented regularly?
Well, I think the overall, it would be students seeing the same behaviors out of the same student. And we really, you know, any discipline that you may give or any reaction to discipline is supposed to change behavior. That's what we want. We're not in the business of quote unquote punishing students. We're in the position and the desire to change the behavior of that student and correct that behavior of that student. So that's really part of the goal, is to not to see those behaviors again with students, but also just to change the general climate of behaviors in a school. And if you start with that circle of respect for everybody, I think you get further.
Goes along with our mission of the growth of lifelong learners. Thank you, Dr. Valatevich.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now looking at the consent agenda.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mr. Irwin moved to approve the consent agenda. Mrs. Wise seconded. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers? Aye. Ms. Scott?
And now looking at the October accounts payable docket and the Finance Committee. Any comments from the Finance Committee? We had some questions. We met and had some questions, and they were fully answered, I think made clear. So any other comments by the Finance Committee members?
Just to echo what you said, it was very thorough.
Yes, we appreciate those explanations always. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we accept the accounts payable docket as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Laura moved to approve the accounts payable docket for October. And Mrs. Killian seconded. Dr. Golden.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian. Aye. Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers. Aye. Ms. Scott.
Aye. Dr. Hayworth regarding donations.
Madam President, the administration seeks approval to accept donations to the Terre Haute South Vigo High School and the VCSC backpack program.
And we are always very appreciative of those donations from the community.
I'll make a motion to accept the donations for the Terre Haute South Vigo and the School Corporation Backpack Program.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mrs. Wise made a motion to accept the donations, and Mr. Irwin seconded that.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian. Aye. Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers. Aye. Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Thank you, Board.
Mr. Cox regarding the personnel report and professional leave request.
President Lauer, Superintendent Hayworth, members of the Board of Trustees, administration seeks approval of the personnel report and professional leave request as presented.
I'll move approval of the personnel report and professional leave request as presented.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mr. Irwin moved approval of the personnel report and professional leave request, and Mrs. Laura seconded that. Dr. Goller.
Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian. Aye. Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers. Aye. Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Thank you.
Now, regarding our 2022 budget adoption, I think there is a public comments. Yes, 2 public comments on that. So, Matthew Harvey, would you like to approach the podium? Remember that you are addressing the board and that there will be no reaction from the audience.
So my understanding of it is that you want to raise taxes or have a referendum again, is that correct?
This has to do with the 2022 budget adoption
Okay.
only.
So, with the budget, I know that y'all have moved into this building. What has happened with the building on Wabash?
Okay, again, these comments are only addressing the budget.
That is part of your operation budget, is it not, ma'am?
No.
Maybe I'm mistaken. Right. So, our referendum fund, the money you collect, what does that go to?
Again, we're talking about the 2022
It's right there.
Budget.
I'm asking questions about it.
adoption.
What does that
This
go
is
to?
comments, not questions.
Right, this is a period of time where the audience has comments to the board. It's never been a discussion. You know, we have not, I'm going back, I'm saying too much now. There has not been a conversation about it, but you can certainly call in or request a conversation with a specific person at another time or after.
I was
when
just
the board
asking for
meeting
clarification
closes.
to better understand, ma'am, that's all.
It's 22.
Thank you. Joshua Holt.
Thank you for the time. I've done a little bit of research lately into the budget and the money that's been spent, and I would like to raise a few concerns with that. It's come to my understanding that the Vigo County School Corporation has received over $30 million in grant funds from the ESSER 2 and 3 funds.
Okay, those are not tax supported, and so they don't have anything to do with the 2022 budget. ESSER funds that you're speaking of are not tax
So-
supported?
I guess my big question for you then, ma'am, is where can I find a copy of this budget? Because I've gone through your, everything in the board packets. I have yet to actually see a copy of this budget. I have found several misappropriations of money. I mean, looking at the ESSER2 fund,
Well, again,
$2.8 million was spent on
the
Chromebooks.
funds are not tax supported, and therefore they're not part of the 2022 budget adoption, and that's what the topic is now that you may address,
So
is the 2022 budget.
in 2022, you were spending money from these funds. Therefore, that does become
They're
part of
not-
that budget.
They're not tax related, and therefore they're not part of our 2022 budget.
Okay.
You can
So I
make
think
those
we'll have this.
What was that, ma'am?
Make
No.
your remarks at the comment
At
time
the
later,
end of
not
this
right
Okay.
now.
Right.
I definitely will.
We'll follow through.
Now, my big question though, since this is about the budget, is where can I actually get a copy of the approved budget? Because like I said, this is not something that I've been able to find. Do I need to submit a Freedom of Information Act request in order to get these copies? Where is this available to me as a member of the public?
Yeah, has it been filed yet, Donna?
It will, after tonight's meeting, it has to be filed with the paper.
Because truly, I believe as a member of the public, that this budget should not be voted on or approved until we, as the public, have had an opportunity to review that. And I'll wrap it up with that, so.
Thank you. Mrs. Wilson.
President Lauer, Dr. Hayworth, members of the Board of School Trustees. Included in your board packet this evening are the resolutions that complete the 2022 budget adoption process. If approved, these documents, along with the other supplemental budget forms, will be uploaded to Gateway this week in accordance with guidelines established by the Department of Local Government Finance. Tonight's packet includes the following resolutions. Budget Form 4, the ordinance or resolution for appropriations and tax rates. This form lists all budgeted funds with the proposed budgets, levies, and tax rates. As you can see on the slide, our proposed budget for 2022 in the tax-supported funds is $167 million with an advertised tax levy of $45 million and a combined tax rate of $1.20. Remember that levies and rates will both be adjusted downward during the DLGF review process. Next, you will find the appropriation reduction resolution. This resolution authorizes us to reduce current year budgets, freeing up dollars that we do not intend to spend in 2021 and rolling those dollars forward to fund the calendar year 2022 budgets. Funds rolled forward ultimately reduce the need to impose additional taxes in the next budget year. We've also included in your packet this year a more generic resolution allowing budget modifications for 2022 budget purposes. During our budget workshop, the DLGF recommended units seek approval of this type of resolution in order to ensure that unit representatives have authority to modify 2021 budgets during the budget review process. The previous resolution already includes the major budget modifications that we anticipate. However, unknowns regarding assessed values, last half of the year expenses, etc., can create last-minute modifications that can be addressed if necessary with the authority granted by this resolution. And finally, the last two documents are the resolutions adopting both the capital projects and bus replacement plans as presented and included in our budget books that were distributed at the last board meeting. The CPF plan is a 3-year plan for capital expenditures, and the bus replacement plan is a 5-year snapshot of anticipated bus replacements. Keep in mind that by statute, buses are on a 12-year replacement cycle, even though the published and proposed plan covers only the first 5 years of that cycle. We feel this budget reflects our continuing efforts to promote fiscal responsibility as we acknowledge our responsibility to the taxpayers of Vigo County. With that said, we respectfully request approval of the required 22 budget documents presented in your board packet this evening. Thank you for your patience as we work through this process.
I just had one comment. I wanted to say thank you for those thorough budget books that we received at the last board meeting and are made available.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
And I will entertain a motion to approve A, B, C, D, and E.
I'll make a motion to approve the submitted budgets for all of the described proposed budgets.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Mrs. Wise has voiced approval for sections A, B, C, D, and E of our budget adoption, and Mr. Irwin seconded that. Any other comments? Dr. Goller?
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian. Aye. Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers. Aye. Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Next, I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the capital projects fund plan.
I will make a motion to adopt the capital projects fund plan.
I'll second that.
Mrs. Killian made a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the capital projects fund plan. Mr. Irwin seconded that. Questions from the board? Dr. Goller?
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian. Aye. Mrs. Lohr,
Aye.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers. Aye. Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Now, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution to adopt the bus replacement plan.
I'll make a motion to accept the resolution to adopt the bus replacement plan.
Thank you.
Second that.
Thank you. Mrs. Wise moved to approve the resolution to adopt the bus replacement plan. Mrs. Lohr seconded that. Comments from the board?
I just,
Dr.
I feel like we should point out that this is coming after a significant decrease in the number of buses that we had approved in years past. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so we're working to make sure our fleet stays up to snuff.
That's right.
Right,
A
so,
healthy fleet we need
Yes.
to have.
so I just felt like we needed to remind everyone about that. Thank
And
you.
we recently moved, Dr. Hayworth can correct me if I'm wrong, from buses with motors in the rear to buses with motors in the front because they're more cost effective.
Thank you, both of you. All right, Dr. Goller?
Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian. Aye. Ms. Lohr,
Aye.
Mrs. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers. Aye. Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Now we're moving on to grants, and Dr. Goller?
Good evening, Superintendent Hayworth, President Lauer, and members of the board. This evening, we have 3 grants that we are requesting approval for. The non-English speaking grant, the Title III program grant, and then the Team Vigo Student Leadership and Service Learning grant. I'd like to share some information about the first 2, and then invite Dr. Hayworth to share some information about the Student Leadership grant. The first 2 grants are part of our English Learner program, and I'd like to thank Janet Brosmer, one of our curriculum coordinators, very much for her leadership in the implementation of these 2 grant programs. The first one is a non-English speaking program for $59,264.22. It's a grant that runs through this school year, and basically it helps us with the implementation of our WIDA assessments. This is the state test that is used for accountability. It is also a test that helps us better deliver services to our English learner students. We have 171 English learner students right now in the Vigo County School Corporation, and we administer this test in January and February to these students, and it gives them a certain diagnosis that helps us then target instruction with teachers as well as different materials in the classroom. So it's a very, very valuable grant for us.
to provide some very specific materials for these students. So that is the first grant, and you see a detailed budget that is provided with that. The second grant is, again, another English learner grant, and it helps us meet the individual goals of each of these students. They have an individual learning plan, and it has goals, and again, it has a testing caliber for us to use to determine the best ways to help that student in the classroom. So for instance, in our reading curriculum, we have a separate set of materials that it still follows our pacing guide with our regular curriculum, but it's targeted to English learners and helps them better pre-teaches material for them, as well as helps them with some remediation after they read the materials. So a wonderful opportunity for us to support those 171 students.
Madam President, members of the board, the Vigo County School Corporation is requesting approval to accept a $6,500 grant from the Wabash Valley Community Foundation. The grant will support the Team Vigo Leadership Conference and leadership activities moving forward. The Vigo County School Corporation is investing in the Team Vigo Leadership Conference because it will assist the district in fulfilling its vision and mission. The vision to inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. The mission is to create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. Changes sought by providing this group are as follows: the retention of our community's current and emerging high school students, leaders, after high school graduation, to connect our current and emerging high school leaders to our existing community and business leaders. 3, the ability to include our current and emerging high school student leaders in the planning process for the future. And 4, greater student involvement in their community. The first Team Vigo Student Leadership Conference was financially supported by the Vigo County School Corporation, the Terre Haute Chamber of Commerce, St. Mary of the Woods, Ivy Tech Community College, Duke Energy, Sycamore Engineering, Vectren, Tabco, and Glasgow. The goal for the grant is to use Community Foundation dollars to strengthen the conference and ongoing educational offerings, so more organizations see a clear reason to connect to future investment. We look for approval of that grant.
Thank you. And again, thanks to seeking out these grants. I would take a motion to approve the non-English speaking grant and the Title III program grant and the Team Vigo Student Leadership and Service Learning Project grant.
I make a motion, we accept all the grants.
I second that.
Thank you. Any comments? I do have one question, Dr. Goldner, and this is sort of, might have to be a rounded number of several who might know, but how many foreign language students, and I'm saying how many different languages do they represent?
Oh my goodness. Gosh, I can get that for you in about 30 seconds.
All right. We'll wait. I had heard 52 a few years ago. And I think that's something that the public would not guess.
And that's not students, that's different.
No, that's not
languages.
students. We have 171 English learning students, but it was languages, their home languages.
Everybody can participate with the guest. And you get a free
You
piece
get
of
an
pie.
extra.
Participate.
Is there an over-under?
Pardon me.
I will say, I
had the privilege several years ago working with a student that was from Armenia. And I loved it. I loved what I would ask her to speak, just share things, what she would say, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful.
It's good, it's an eye-opener, anyway. Your 30 seconds is up.
I'm phoning a friend.
Okay,
You can report back to me.
Wait a minute. We have 20 plus.
20 plus,
20
okay, well,
plus.
it's down from what it had been several years ago.
Spanish is the most common, and then Arabic, 20 plus.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's still a lot to deal with.
I was just wondering how our leadership conference ease for this year, how close are they to the 50,000 hours? Are they?
They have an update coming to you on November the 1st.
Okay. Well,
No.
looking forward to that.
Ryan Easton sent out West Vigos the other day.
We got it. Give another phone.
Oh, we got it. I got it going. Yes, we got it.
West Vigo High School is at 4,500 hours so far.
Oh, I know, they're just wonderful.
Yeah.
They're doing wonderful things. Well, I do think we had a motion and a second on that, so roll call, please.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr?
Aye.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Thank you. And now we have some comments from some visitors tonight. Heather Hindle.
Hello. I wanted to thank you guys for your hard work again, because you do so much for us and our community. My only comment would be on the restorative justice for the schools. And I don't know if it's possible or not, but I think it would be nice if we could to also make sure that our school safety officers also have training in these methods and that they're on board, so they're like a unified front, and so that things are handled seamlessly and with the best outcome for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joshua Holt.
Thanks again. All right, so today, as I was kind of going over before, I knew this was about budget, so I had a lot of questions concerning dollars spent. I've done a lot of digging and a lot of research lately, and primarily it seems like out of the $30 million that Vigo County will be receiving out of the ESSER 2 and 3 funds, the majority of that money so far has been spent out of the 2 fund, a total of $8.4 million. Concerns personally that I have with this money going out is, was it the year before last, you guys approved some kind of bid to get Chromebooks for all of our students, but yet this year there's been another $2.8 million spent on Chromebooks and licenses alone. Whereas walking on down the line, out of that $8 million spent, only $845,000, okay, just short of $1 million, has been spent on building improvements and air quality issues. Considering that you guys are getting this money, and the majority of this money, when you look it up, it is designed to go to, number one, universal masking, which you guys have spent $316,000 on student and staff masks and cleaning supplies, which is really weird considering I keep hearing reports of staff from across the county that are buying masks for students that are coming to school without them. It's really concerning if you've only spent $316,000 on that, but you've spent $2.8 million on Chromebooks, but yet your staff is coming out of pocket to enforce your policy. personally, I find something a little wrong
I hate
with
to
that.
interrupt you, but I do want to say that what you signed up to speak on was social emotional learning as well as.
And masks,
Not the.
yes.
Yeah.
And when you start incorporating the mask part of it, the ESSER funds go right into that, ma'am. It is all coronavirus relief funds, all right? Number two on that item, when you start looking at the funds that you received, building improvements and air quality issues are the second, top, well, maybe not the second, but it's in the top three of the things that should have been addressed, not Chromebook and licenses. When it comes to masks, Dr. Hayworth, I'd like to direct this directly to you because I know we have been in contact in the last few weeks.
The whole board.
Oh, okay, well, I'm addressing the whole board, ma'am.
You're right.
When it comes to attorney-client privilege, I've requested a right to inspect copies of emails that have been sent to and from the administrative team of the Vigo County School Corporation and their legal counsel concerning religious exemptions based on masking. Now, whereas attorney-client privilege is covered under Indiana law, as the client, the Vigo County School Corporation has the ability to waive that and provide me with the information I would like. With that also being said, any information that comes from any Freedom of Information Act requests that is truly confidential does have the ability to be redacted. So, therefore, I feel like the stuff that I'm asking for is very reasonable. Another big thing, too, to point out to you guys is according to the CDC, this is a quote from their website, the terminology used to describe masks is not standardized.
Can you say it again, please?
The terminology used to describe masks is not standardized. I dropped off a few pieces of paper today at the office. I believe if you were to go back and look at those, you'll find the links to this information as well. We also look at a few different standards, such as the emergency use authorizations under the FDA. In August 20th of 2020, let me pull this out real quick, I have it printed off. The FDA revoked the emergency use authorization for face shields and other barriers. The only emergency use authorizations that are currently still in place cover surgical masks. Now, in that emergency use authorization, which I provided members of the administrative team with links to this information, you can see which ones are approved and which ones are not approved. So, as you guys continue to push this mask policy in Vigo County Schools, I highly encourage you to make sure that you are following a standard of efficacy and that you are applying the International Standard 1099-3, which are the general principles governing the biological of medical devices within a risk management process. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Jordan Trachtenberg.
Hello, and thank you to Dr. Kirk and Dr. Bledovich for giving the overview of the restorative justice practices in the Vigo County Schools. My name is Jordan Trachtenberg, and I'm speaking as a resident of Terre Haute. I heard of the recent arrest of a student or students on last Friday afternoon at South High School regarding a fight. And I'd like to know if the school corporation tracks arrest disparities with regards to race, gender, and socioeconomic status. I'd also like to know why the events on Friday did not qualify for restorative justice interventions. Dr. Kirk talked briefly about using language that moves away from "you deserve punishment," and Dr. Bledovich said that the opportunity for redemption is offered to everybody. He said we're not in the business of punishing students, but changing behavior. And I would like to know what specifically happened to the students involved in the fight at South High School on Friday, and how is arresting a child supposed to repair harm in our schools? Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Harvey.
You know, I come to these meetings and to try to learn and understand what's going on in our community. And I often look around and I wonder, I'm like, how many of these people actually have skin in the game, who have kids that your policies affect? And that's just something I wonder. And the things that you do, and we're kind of left out in the dark, we want to trust you all, you know, and what you vote on affects our kids, affects our daily lives, and affects how we live. And the taxes and the referendums and all that, and if we don't necessarily understand what's going on, and we're willing to invest in our kids 100%. But I just want you all to take that into account. You know, that's our number one priority, and we'd much rather work with you guys than have, you know, feel like it's a snake in the grass, if you understand what I'm saying. I mean, there's been a lot of division lately, you know, as in whether kids or, you know, hostility, and, you know, I'm not here to cause any problems, but I want to understand and make sure that critical race theory isn't being taught to my kids and a bunch of different things that isn't in my religious beliefs. So therefore I come here, and hopefully we all can work together.
Thank you.
And I have one question. How do I go about getting a religious exemption for my kids?
Say that one more time, I can't hear it.
How do I go about getting a religious exemption for my kids and myself?
Yeah, so, I don't know, can't recall if you made application for that religious exemption or not.
I've asked for it, but it's always fall on deaf ears.
I think it's been declined, and I think what we would need to see is at greater points in the state, those mandates coming down and says that we have the ability to honor those.
But that also goes against the Constitution, sir, and also the Indiana State Constitution.
That's what I mean by coming down from the state of Indiana.
We are,
Any place I can file grievances on that, sir?
Give me a call, if you would, give me a call, tomorrow, we can talk through that.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you. Any information from the board members?
Well, I would like to say one little thing. Several of us had the opportunity to go to the Indiana State School Board Association Convention Conference this past week, and it was excellent, learned a lot. Stacy was there, Rosemary, and you, Jackie. We just benefited a lot from the information there. I think we help us do better work in the future, so.
It was also a networking time to meet other school board members and administrators throughout the state, which is another plus
Yeah.
to attending those meetings. And I agree. I thought it was a very good conference. Any other notes comments from board members?
I will make a comment just to Mr. Harvey's, when he was speaking. I do have students attending school here, and they are of my utmost priority as well as your own. So
No,
They're
I
fine,
have
yeah,
students
no.
as well.
there are several of
Well,
us, yes.
the majority have children or grandchildren in the school corporation.
And I would just like to encourage, if we have community meetings or anything out there where the public is invited, please come. We want to hear from you. We want a relationship.
No, good. That's,
Violation of open door policy.
well, no, but we do want input from the community.
Absolutely.
Anything else from the board? Dr. Hayworth?
Nothing for me at this time.
I would like to remind you all that we have a November 1st meeting here and then a November 15th meeting here for this upcoming month. So I guess I would wish you all a happy Halloween.
get pie.